Well, hello and welcome back to the channel. Now, I want to try and inspire you guys today. I'm out here by the river with a cuppa and I'm just smelling the roses. You know, today I want to take you to another location soon, which is a spot where I've shot 3 separate times, and I want to go through those 3 separate images that I shot there and sort of go through the different settings and the different mindset that I had whilst I was there at the time. Now, the most recent of those times was just last week. It's now in February here in Australia, and the Milky Way core is just beginning to rise in the eastern sky very early. So I was out there at about 4 a.m. and I got the most recent of those shots. But on the way there, I just thought I'd come here at this location, which is not too far away from there, and sit down here and just breathe in the beautiful fresh air, smell the roses, so to speak, and just relax. So that's what I'm doing right now. Wow, what an absolutely beautiful place to be. And you know, the reason I'm here, which is actually on my way to the location I want to show you today, is just to simply invigorate myself, to try and instill a bit of creative energy into my heart and spirit. And you know, as photographers, we often run out of creativity. We call it plateauing. We get to certain levels in the things that we're wanting to do, and we simply can't push through the barrier to the next level. And you know, one of the keys for me is to relax, to get out here in a place like this and just breathe. And you know, there's something, I don't know, we're connected to the countryside, we're connected to the land here, and somehow it helps us communicate with our creative spirit inside. Now, that's a little bit philosophical, I get that, sorry. But you know, today's video is all about revisiting the same location, and I'm going to take you there in a minute. I guess there are many reasons for revisiting the same location to shoot. It might be a different season. There could be different stars in the sky. We might want to try different lenses the next time we go there. We might want to try some new techniques. We might want to do something with stacking or light painting, or you know, there's a different ISO settings, all sorts of things like that. And you know, the other thing is that we simply might just enjoy that location. Well, all of those things come into play with the place we're going to go to. So let's get on with it. Let's get to that place and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. Well, here we are finally on location, and if you look over my shoulder here, you can see this tree sitting on the hill, which is the subject for today's video. So I came here, as I said, 3 separate occasions to shoot the same tree. And I guess the point of today's video is to let you know that it is okay to revisit the same location and try something a little bit different. So I'm going to run through exactly how I went about doing that. Now, I'm sure you're possibly wondering how I found this tree. Well, it was really quite simple. All I did was drive along the road here on one of my many journeys into the countryside looking for subject matter to shoot. And this tree stood out to me. Why did this tree stand out? One, it's a lone tree on top of a hill. I was able to get a clear horizon behind the tree. And then all I had to do was work out the direction that, for example, the Milky Way was in relation to the tree. So, really quite simple. I established quite early that it was facing in an easterly direction from where I'm standing here right now. So all I have to do is work out the dynamics of where the Milky Way core might be. Worked out absolutely perfectly that the core is rising up directly behind the tree. Now, I'm sure you're probably thinking, what on earth is so special about this tree? Well, I can tell you right now, there is absolutely nothing special about this tree. It's just a gum tree that happens to be out in the hills. Now, there's hundreds and thousands of these trees all around the Australian landscape. But I'll tell you right now, it is not as easy as you may think to find one that's isolated on the crest of a hill. And that is what I was searching for. So I remember the first time I came to shoot this tree, I didn't have high expectations. Why is that? Well, because it was an almost full moon. It was probably about a 90% moon at the time. But the thing I did like was the fact that the moon was rising immediately behind the tree. So I was able to actually hide the moon and create, if you like, a silhouette of the tree. Now, the Milky Way core was right there. So I shot this in May. That's the time of year, and at that time the Milky Way core was rising up in the east in a reasonable sort of fairly early hour of the evening. I was using my Nikon D750 and the Sigma 35mm f1.4 lens. I shot that with the 10-second shutter speed, set the lens at f2.8, and the ISO was 1250. I didn't need a lot of exposure because that moon was really bright, but I'm actually pretty happy with how that one turned out. So I put this into my memory banks, and I thought to myself, what I'd like to do is shoot this with a wider focal length lens and possibly do a panorama so I could get more of the Milky Way and the sky, but still make the tree the main feature of my image. So the next time I came, which was about 2 months after the first shot that I took, was in July of that year. And I had my Nikon D750 with the 20mm f1.8 lens. Set my camera nice and low over here, and I decided I would do a panorama. Now, in July, early in the evening, there was no moon, and the Milky Way core is coming up in the east over here, but at that time of year, it's reasonably high, so it was fairly high above the tree, and it swept right down there towards the south. So I decided to do a multi-row panorama. Now, I find panoramas when the Milky Way is in that orientation to be a lot more difficult than what they are when it's in the western sky, stretching across in a lower, I guess, position in the sky. Nevertheless, I had a go at it. And what I found was that I did about 50 exposures. That's right, 50 exposures, multi-row pano. So it was probably about 5 rows. To be absolutely honest with you, I can't remember because it was a little while ago now. But I do remember thinking that last row was almost vertically straight up above my head. So that's why I had to shoot so many. I was mindful that I know with panoramas, when you get to the top, when you're doing multi-row panos, sometimes the software can stretch the stars and they don't look round anymore, and I don't like that look. So anyway, getting the silhouette of the tree, and I did a little bit of light painting in every exposure. Possibly not the top row because there was no ground in the shot, but for all the other exposures that showed any of the tree or any of the landscape, just a little bit of light painting. But in the end, I actually love this shot. And so that brings me to the third and most recent shoot that I did here with this beautiful old tree. And I decided I wanted to, again, change the focal length. So I brought my Nikon Z6 this time with a 50mm f1.8 S lens. That's a new lens that I haven't really used very much. So I wanted to bring that one out and give it a go. Now, it was about 4 a.m, about a week ago. And I was here, the Milky Way was rising up behind the tree. There was absolutely no moon at all. No light, really dark location out here. There's a little bit of light pollution off there on this side of the frame from Melbourne, which is probably an hour and a half's drive away from here. But I wasn't too worried about that because I actually like the way that sometimes a little bit of light pollution gives that beautiful silhouette without washing out the sky. And that's exactly what I found. Now, what I did, I stacked 12 images, I think it was, at f2.2. I used a 6-second shutter speed. That's right, 6 seconds. Now, why did I use a 6-second shutter speed? It's because I was using a 50mm focal length lens. At 50mm, the stars move very quickly through the frame. So I wanted to minimize the gap between each of the shots. So that's why I used 6 seconds. Now, to somewhat alleviate that and create a better exposure, I decided to bump the ISO up to 10,000. Now, the Z6 handles 10,000 ISO without any problems at all. My intention with this shot was to stack it for noise reduction in the Sequator software, which you've seen me do that before. I've done it heaps of times, and I'm doing more and more stacking for noise reduction with my photography these days because it really does work. It's worth the extra effort. And to be honest with you, to take 12 shots back to back, one after the other, is not very difficult to do. Not a great amount of extra processing, and I think the result is fantastic. But then what I decided to do, I pushed my camera back a little bit to frame it a bit further back, and what happened was I decided I'd do a panorama. Once again, I did a multi-row panorama using the same settings on the camera, but this time shooting I think I shot 3 rows. Yeah, my memory's gone. It was only last week. I think I shot 3 rows using a horizontal aspect ratio, horizontal camera position, and did 1, 2, 3 rows just to get a little bit more real estate in the sky. But you know, one of the things I absolutely love about the 50mm lens is the compression. So what it does, it shoots the tree, and in fact the tree looks pretty much the same in all of these shots, but the sky looks different. And what it does, it brings that background, that Milky Way, that gorgeous Milky Way, as if you can reach out and touch it. It's close, and that's one of the things I love. So yes, there are challenges shooting longer focal length lenses for nightscapes and Milky Ways, but the benefits are far outweighing the challenges. And of course, when the Milky Way's low down like that, it looks absolutely fantastic. So you'll notice the framing's very similar in all of the images, but they all have quite a varied end result. Same location, 3 different shots, 3 completely different images. So what does all this mean? Well, essentially, I'm trying to encourage you to revisit some of the same locations that you've been to before, but to try something different. Shooting at a successful location instills confidence. And when we have confidence in photography, it helps us push through and try new things. And trying new things will make us grow and mature as photographers. Now, growth as a photographer is never easy. It's like stretching, and it takes time, and there will be setbacks, but it's worth all the effort in the long run. Now, one of the things that I encourage photographers to do all across the board is to deconstruct images. So if you see an image that you like, have a good close look at it, and you can work out a few things. Firstly, you can see how it was framed and composed. Now, that is essential to any great image, let alone a nightscape image. Now, you know how difficult that can be. I've gone through that in a few of my videos, and I'll continue to talk about that at length in future videos. You can talk about how it was lit. Really important, because you can see where the highlights are, where the shadows are. You know where the light's coming from, and you know where the light's not coming from. Dynamics in the image is extremely important. Then you can even work out what lens may have been used, or at least in the ballpark, whether it's an ultra wide or a medium lens like a 24mm, or even something like a 35 or a 50. You can work that out by deconstructing an image that someone else may have taken. So go ahead and test yourself. Have a look at some images and just see whether you can get somewhere in the ballpark of working out how that shot was actually taken. You know, Nightscape photography can be very much a technical process, all about settings and very clinical, to be honest. And you know, my challenge to you is to not let it be that. Chase the magic. See if you can make an image not be about the settings, but be more about the artistic skills and the vision of seeing something that others just can't see. You know, is that difficult to do? Yeah, absolutely it is, but you can do it. I know you can. And so our time out here in this paddock next to this gorgeous old tree comes to a close. You know, if you like this type of content and you haven't already subscribed to the channel, I would love to have you on board. And I always love to read the comments down below, so feel free to leave a comment. And until I see you next time, possibly out under the stars, who knows where I'm going to be, I'll look forward to seeing you then. See you later.